The room is stable and we're ready to begin.
Very good. All right. I'll call this meeting to order of the Oceanside Unified School District Board meeting for October 13th, 2020. Start with a roll call. Item 5U, Mr. Madison.
All right, thanks. So Todd Madison, parent of Oceanside Kids, and as disclosure, a candidate for school board in this election. A simple question on this one. I see we had a number of bids here, some of which were almost $2,000 less than the chosen bid. Those low bids were all disqualified for a clerical error, according to the notes. There's probably more to this, but that makes it sound like someone simply missed a blank on a form and now we're going to spend $200,000 more for this project. I know you can't spend bond money on supplies, but just to give everyone some reference here, that money is enough to provide our teachers with $250 each for classroom supplies. I'm sure our teachers understand what they could buy for that, and all would prefer that to not having to paying out of pocket or asking parents to donate. I assume the issue is more than just missing a checkbox somewhere, but I'd like to ask, what kind of clerical error disqualified those bids, and why would we not allow that to be corrected so we can consider saving $200,000 to use on other things? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Staff have an explanation?
Yes,
On the bid?
Dr. Soto is going to explain how the bid process works and the legalities that we're required to be involved in. Dr. Soto?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Vitale. Thank you, trustees. Procurement for governmental work is a very specific and legal process. And so when we engage in entertaining and advertising for bids, it has a very specific compliance in order for us to award a bid. And it typically, if a bid is considered unresponsive, it indicates that a required element was not submitted, and the required element is typically considered clerical in the term. However, we are not allowed to consider non-responsive bids. If we were to consider allowing a vendor to correct the error, resubmit, we would be guilty or liable then for any and all future repercussions from the other vendors that were responsive. And so when we engage in the process, we advertise for the scope, and then we are very specific about the criteria for award. And we are very methodical and have multiple raters that grade and acknowledge the responsive contracts before we bring them to the board for award and for consideration. So it is a very strong governmental process that is something that we adhere to, and we take our bidding process very serious, and we acknowledge that if a vendor is non-responsive, that they are given the opportunity to understand why, to correct it in the future.
I would also chime in there and assume that on some of these errors that are submitted, that they in fact are potentially errors of magnitude in terms of dollars on the bids, and that therefore their non-responsiveness could very well be something that could lead to the bid being higher than even $200,000 off in the bids that were submitted. Is that the case that you find it on occasion?
Absolutely, trustee. And another area that we find being non-responsive is if we're requiring a specific certification or a specific licensing, and that is missing or not at the level that we have addressed, then that could be problematic if we were to award it to a firm that brings in a smaller amount but doesn't actually have the qualifications. So it could come back to be a liability for us if we did not adhere to the stated requirements that was posted.
Great, thank you. Wait for them to get connected in.
Voting somebody that has just the first name of Larry listed, but he's the only Larry, so.
All right, that's a good guess.
Larry, if you're Larry Berry, you're free to address the board.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, go for it, Larry.
Yeah, my name is Larry Berry. I live on 3973 Brown Street. I'm really disappointed in Sharon Soto here, and quite frankly, I talked to her last week, and she left out so many things here. It's just disgraceful. Um, One of the things Mike Blessing and I have a disagreement with is the San Margarita and North Terrace, that the citizens of Oceanside paid for those schools, and we've never received one penny from the uh, in repayment for those schools. I think and one of the things that Sharon Soda left out is that she's refinanced these bills, these the bond issues. So we were promised these things were never going to go over $58.38 per $100,000. It's now over $100 per $100,000, and it goes out to and we refinance these things or defibulize them, whatever they call it, and stuff. And now it's out to over 40 years. They're going to be paying on these deadbeat schools. Again, Sharon Soda disappoints me once again, and she never mentioned Garrison. Is a crap hole right now with graffiti and theft and homeless people living in there. And I know she wants to sprinkle this with just being happy-go-lucky. Here we go, where everything's rosy here, but it sucks. We also have a problem with I think the school with and I go back to Todd Madison on that envelope that they're doing way out of control here in money wise for what they're doing, and I just have to say our team that's supposed to be watching over how much this thing costs. I get it. I've been doing this for 25 years, watching the school bonds. I know everything that government does, schools included, cost 2 or 3 times more than what it should cost. But this is just getting so out of control, and I don't believe that Sharon Soda has those numbers right. My numbers keep coming back up that we only have about 23 to 26 million dollars left in Prop 8. Now, I want to go back to what Mike Blessing said and Larry Perani that said Prop H was going to finish all of, was going to give us all the money that we needed to fix all of our schools, and we wouldn't need this ever again. Well, I'll tell you, Mike, it didn't work out so good. We're stuck with these crappy schools, and people are walking around, and the FID here is probably screwing up everything, but we have lost so much money, and the taxpayers are getting screwed over big time here. And those people in Garrison and St. Louis Ray, because we built schools on Camp Pendleton. Now I'm a combat veteran Marine, Mike, and you are not, and we have to look out for the taxpayers here. And again, the taxpayers are getting screwed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. I don't agree with all those comments, but you have the right to present those arguments. I will say as a point of reference, of the 2008 bond, I was not on the board when that bond was put together and passed in June of 2008. I came on the board in that following November. And I don't believe there was a promise that every school in Oceanside would be rebuilt with Prop H. I'm certain that's not a promise that was made. There certainly was a list of all the schools that could have eligible projects built with Prop H, including playgrounds and HVAC and what have you, so that we could spend money from Prop H as needed, as the board decided was needed at each and every school. And we significantly remodeled and rehabbed several of them, as Shannon pointed out, the big picture. But by no means was there a promise in 2008 that every school would get rebuilt with one-time money from Prop H. That simply is not true. Next speaker, Michael Real.
Good evening, Board Trustees. My name is Michael Rail. I'm an Oceanside taxpayer, resident of Oceanside, and also a teacher at San Luis Rey. Thank you, Dr. Soto and Ms. McGrew, for your presentation. It's exciting to see the beginning works of our San Luis Rey project beginning to take shape. There are, however, several suggestions that I would like to make regarding the preliminary layout of the school. These suggestions have been already made to several modernization planning committee members, but I believe these suggestions need to be explicitly stated to you as the 5 members governing over our current project. My first is the NPR needs to address width as much as it does length. The current plan expands the length of the NPR in order to provide more depth to the stage to make more room for scenery and performers to move. This is accurate, and additionally, there is a need to widen the stage with the wings to include all the performers on a given scene, not to mention the need to make more room for the cafeteria to serve lunches. This is especially needed in COVID times. Lastly, the wider building would also encompass more room for our cafeteria workers in order to make room for their ability. And also, if we are looking at a VAPA facility, this would increase our ability to bring our culinary arts program that we have been wanting for some time now, and it's always been an idea, but we really want to make all the potential as needed at this school. As far as the kindergarten, the second is the kindergarten building. The area should be redeveloped in such a way to encompass all 3 of the classrooms to increase collaboration. There shouldn't be a lone kindergarten building on the side. If there is not a way to solve that, then I would suggest that putting a second classroom with that 3rd building so that it would increase collaboration amongst teachers and people don't feel left out and just by themselves in a classroom. There will be a need to resolve the kinder playground, and this could easily be solved by utilizing, there's already 2 playgrounds, the primary and the secondary playground. We could continue to do that and use those, or use the primary playground and not have a separate kindergarten playground. The third suggestion is there's a need for the teacher workroom and the lunchroom to have more collaborative space. There is a current wall that's in between on the projected. It's right now it's a current classroom, but it's the one next to the library. That space should be a little bit more, should be open space for teachers in order to collaborate and know that there's schools like that at South Oceanside where the teacher workroom is also in the teacher lunchroom or the staff lunchroom in order to promote that collaboration space. There's not a lot of room in between classrooms, as you can see in your drawings, that other 21st century classroom or schools have. So it's really important to have those collaborative spaces and make the most of what we have. And the last is that the admin building that currently is in place, I had spoken to several committee members as well as Dr. Aranda regarding the green room in the back of the stage in order to help facilitate backstage work that has to be done, and also for students to get to and from the stage. This would also serve as a classroom with mirrors in order to have a dance classes. We do have some community members that are asking for what kind of dances dance classes we would be able to offer, and if we are going to be offering as far as programming wise, we will need mirrors so that it's the best way to teach students dance.
Thank you, Michael. You've hit your 3 minutes. All right, sir. I appreciate it. Okay. Please.
Todd Madison.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Todd Madison again, parent of OUSD kids, still a candidate for school board. I'm glad we've come to an agreement with the CSA to keep our employees safe. We Todds have to stick together. I think this looks like a good agreement that helps everyone. I agree with them. I'm glad to see item 1A says we'll be adhering to the guidelines issued by the Department of Public Health. Those guidelines appear to have proven effective at protecting kids and staff from COVID, Last week, the Health and Human Services Secretary said we have not seen a connection between increased transmission and school reopening or in-person learning. He also said we're looking at the information to see if there's a connection and so far have not found one. This is the best current information. We now have MOUs for both labor groups. Perhaps the board can ask the district why we haven't seen a plan for safe full-time return yet. I also like item 3, screening. This also follows CDPH guidelines. It's very similar to the outline of screening procedures published by Del Mar Union, a district that has now been back to school full-time for over 4 weeks. The precautions being taken by Del Mar have been so successful, they've had 0 cases among staff, and today show 1 active case among students. I commend the CSEA and district for including such provisions in the document. With those precautions, the Del Mar schools case rate is about 18 times lower than the case rate in the zip codes surrounding their schools. It seems the best way to protect Del Mar Union staff and kids is to put them in school, where the protection measures are more stringent than the precautions outside schools. Since Del Mar elementaries are exactly the same size as Oceanside elementaries, perhaps we should do the same for our staff and kids to protect them from COVID the same way they're doing it in Del Mar. Lastly, I appreciate the accommodation provisions of item 6A. Speaking as a cancer survivor myself, I understand the picture is different for high-risk individuals, and I like seeing OUSD accommodate that. That's exactly what the parent group advocating for a plan for safe return has been suggesting since June for all OUSD staff. While I've been knocking on doors, I've spoken to a number of CSEA members. All express the same sentiments we hear from our teachers as well. They want their kids to be back in school. They want to be back in school with them. Last week, CBS 8 held a panel discussion, including experts from Rady's Children's, the county school superintendent, the San Diego district attorney, and others. Rady said, well, we're worried. It's not a big enough worry to keep kids from going to school. And the county superintendent said, there has not been a spread inside a school, an outbreak in a school, or community transmission in a school. Anyone can watch that discussion online if you want to see what the best current information is. Now that we have the proper MOUs in place for both groups, perhaps it's time for the district to present a plan for full-time return to our board for examination and discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. We need a motion on this to approve the ratification of the MOU. Do I have a motion from anybody?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second the motion. But
Thank
I
you,
do
sir.
have a comment
Yes,
regarding
Eleanor.
what I just heard. I think, you're comparing apples and avocados. All right. Del Mar has the average income in Del Mar is $190,000 versus Oceanside, which the average income is $60,000 or a little bit less than that. You have a situation where you have the educational, the awareness level of parents is a little bit more sophisticated than what we have in Oceanside. And I'll just be frank and honest about it. I've taught in Del Mar, so I know. The fact that I just read 2 weeks ago, I think San Diego Union Tribune, where they said countywide there are 300 students, scholars that have COVID, have been tested positive for COVID. So I'm really concerned that the information that's being presented at the board meetings are not as consistent and perhaps the word honest as they could be. We're not here to campaign. We're here to seek information and to share information. That's the purpose of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Tiffany Ketchum, Todd Madison, Elaine Kiswick, and Catherine Seams.
Great. Tiffany?
Hi, board and guests. I'd like to briefly, sorry, I apologize. My name is Tiffany Ketchum. I'd like to briefly speak to the board about some unanswered concerns. I'd like to know what is going to happen to children that are on IEPs and others that can't go back to in-person learning at this time due to high medical reasons. They can't be forced into Surfside where their needs cannot be properly met, including for these, as it will reduce their progress and causes disruption to their case management teams and requires a change in placement, among other things, which is a huge concern for these students. I'm trying to figure out if they, meaning the board and the district, can actually force us out of our home school, or if the school should accommodate through the IEP so that their class and teams stay intact for multiple reasons. It's making me sad that this hasn't been answered publicly for the kids and families with these concerns, which, although are not a huge portion of families in OUSD, those families are not insignificant either. We want to be back at our homeschool when safe, but what is able to be done until we can do so? All children deserve a free and appropriate education, even during times like this through this COVID crisis and risk. How many live minutes online, in person, or online with the teacher will the different school levels actually have, especially elementary, once on the hybrid schedule starts? When you factor in class breaks and nutrition and all of these safety measures are going to take up and eat up into the educational day, it's far less. This will increase the negative impact to children with special needs, and this needs to be considered as we switch to these learning models. I know that you can't directly necessarily answer me right now, but I would like to bare minimum hear when this could be addressed, because I think that it's being forgotten or pushed off. And it's concerning to me that I've asked this question of administration multiple times, and everybody has only been able to say, we're hoping for an answer soon. These children and these families deserve an answer. Thank you very much, board. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Tiffany. Appreciate your comments. Next. Todd?
All right, thanks.
Oh, you're on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Greg. Okay, I'm still a parent. I'm still a candidate. I'm still Todd Madison. Regarding Eleanor's early comments, I had to put this in. I don't believe COVID infections have anything to do with the income of the population. Del Mar is receiving the same COVID mitigation funding per student we are, and I suggest she simply look at Del Mar's own COVID dashboard if she wants numbers. To suggest that I, of all people, make up numbers as a part of a campaign is ridiculous. I find it offensive. Meanwhile, in the past, when I was a co-leader of the Parent Advisory Committee and a member of the LCAP committee, we put great effort into finding out what parents thought about the education of their kids. Now, as a candidate, I've been walking neighborhoods and I've stood on 2,785 doorsteps. I know many of the people I've talked to are listening, and I have to say thanks for all the great conversations we've had. I haven't met anyone who says they've met Dr. Evans or Mr. Blessing on their door, by the way. I've spoken to single mothers who feel guilty about leaving their elementary kids at home all day to navigate the computer maze on their own, and they hope to get an education. I've spoken to Hispanic families who don't speak enough English to help their little kids in their online classes, and as Eric mentioned, have to depend on secondary school siblings to help out, sacrificing their own school time. I've spoken to parents of kids with special needs who feel they can't provide the kind of specialized instruction their kids need and are worried about the long-term impact. I've spoken to parents who have decided the best thing to do is to create a neighborhood pod or take their kids to a local charter. I've even spoken to parents who have the flexibility to literally leave the state to move their kids to a place where in-person learning is happening. The education of our kids is that important to our parents. Enrollment is now down 7%. If that holds, revenue will be down $17 million next year, which will start a cycle of employee layoffs and more cuts to programs and services for our kids. Does it surprise anyone that customers leave if you don't provide what they want? Maybe we need to do something different here. Maybe we need to elect board members who understand that the customer comes first and understand you can't continually make decisions that benefit the employees over and above the customers without there being an impact. Maybe we need board members willing to stand up for what our parents want for the education of their kids. I would urge anyone listening to this to help in that effort by voting for me, Todd Madison, in this election. If you have your ballot, mark it tonight. If you'd like to do your part to make parent voices heard, spread the word to your friends and neighbors. You can go to my website, toddforkids.com, todd4kids.com, sign up for the email list and volunteer there. Let's put kids first in Oceanside education. Vote Todd Madison for school board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Next up, Elaine.
Hello, I'm Elaine Keswick. I would like to speak about my daughter Coral, who attends a special education preschool class in the district. Coral is nonverbal, has autism, intellectual disability, and significant gross motor and fine motor challenges. I've chosen to share about Coral to help you better understand why her challenges and unique needs make distance learning inappropriate for her and make it essential for her to have the opportunity to learn in a classroom. I've attended every board meeting since June. I feel obligated to share how disappointed I am in OUSD for their lack of honest and transparent communication throughout this whole process. Here's a timeline to help you better understand. Schools in San Diego County were able to open on September 1st. After the September board meeting, it was announced that small cohorts of students with special needs would be returning on September 28th. On September 23rd, the district's website still said that some special needs students would be returning on September 28th. So on this date, I reached out to the district to confirm my daughter's return schedule for that week. Only after I reached out to the district was I told that the dates had been pushed back and would be discussed at the September 29th board meeting. As soon as the district knew the timeline for reopening would not be met, which was at least by the week prior, a message should have gone out to all special education families. No message was sent. At the board meeting on September 29th, Coral's return was pushed back by another 5 weeks to November 2nd. Furthermore, her special education preschool class was not included in any proposed hybrid schedule, even when the state preschool did have a proposed schedule. Throughout all of this, there has been no clear explanation for why Coral cannot return. In a letter from the superintendent on September 22nd, it seemed like she was trying to use misleading statements to justify a postponement. Her letter stated, Oceanside has the 5th highest case count in San Diego County out of more than 40 cities. However, she failed to mention that Oceanside is the 3rd largest city in the county. Proportionally speaking, we are actually doing better than expected. Using the City of Oceanside's daily case count website, I computed the daily average of new cases for the weeks leading up to the September 8th and the September 29th board meetings. Respectively, the average was 18 and 12.7 cases per day. The average actually went down. If daily average is lower, what reason is there to postpone a return in small cohorts for our most impacted students, including Coral? Since September 1st, San Diego County, including the city of Oceanside, had the green light to provide Coral with at least some in-class time to educate her in an appropriate way, which she is guaranteed to by law. However, it is 43 days later and OUSD has failed to provide her with that. This is a major compliance problem for OUSD. Compounding this delayed return for Coral is the lack of proactive communication for the district. It only adds to the frustration and anxiety so many parents feel right now. I sincerely hope that the district becomes more honest and transparent in their communication moving forward. I also hope the district and the board acts with urgency in bringing back the most impacted students, including Coral. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Elaine. Last speaker, Catherine.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Catherine. I'm just, I don't talk very well, so forgive me if I get mumbled, but I have a few questions. What are the plans for increasing number of kids who are failing, even with tutoring, with the stresses and anxiety that this brings, and the teachers being strict and not being understanding of how this is going. Kids don't always learn the best in front of a screen, so an increasing number of kids are failing. And so, what is your guys's thoughts and discussions on that? And what are we going to do to help them, because we're going to have way less kids passing with what's going on. And then, why are we only doing 2 days a week? Why not 5 days a week? I don't understand what 2 days a week difference is versus 5 days. If anything, we can do like different times when half the kids go back and half of them, you know, in the morning, or maybe half of them in the evening, or in the afternoon, especially when there's going to be shorter days anyways. And then I'm sure there's a ton of parents who don't want their kids to go back, so there's not going to be an increased full capacity in the school in the first place. And then also with the masks, I understand needing the mask, but like in a restaurant, you go, you wear your mask, and then when you sit down, you take them off. Being around a bunch of people, what is your discussions about the kids in class while they're sitting 6 feet apart? If they're already 6 feet apart, they don't need masks. So maybe when they're sitting down doing their classwork, they can have their masks off versus having them on for such a long period of time. And also, what these questions that are being asked, are we going to get answers from them, or because I remember last time I went to one of these, none of the questions got answered, and I was kind of up in the air what those answers were. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate your public comments. Those items were not on the agenda, so we cannot address those or respond to those, but I urge you to stay in contact with your teacher, your principal at your school, with your child, and hang in there with us.